This is actually pretty funny. Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Noam Blum, Neon Taster on Twitter has the talking points are clearly out. Here's Bernie Sanders. We've recently seen disturbing anti-Semitic attacks and a troubling rise of Islamophobia. Ayanna Pressley, I strongly condemn the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Corey Bush, the work of dismantling anti-Semitism, anti-blackness, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian racism, and every other form of hate is our work. Jamal Bowman, we've seen an increase in anti-Semitism and Islamophobic hate in New York City and nationwide. Julian Castro, the United States must work toward a future in which Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace. Marie Newman, over the past several months, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Islamophobic attacks. Leslie Ann Brandt, it's not hard to have empathy for families, both Palestinian and Israeli, living through this. It's not hard, it's not hard to not be Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. And on it goes. We've got the talking points now. We've got the talking points. They are that it is anti-Israel and anti-Palestinian. It is anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It's got to be both sides. It's got to be both sides doing it. It's got to be all or nothing on both sides. We can't focus on anti-Semitism. Why? Because they'll alienate one side. They will alienate part of their base if they just call it out. Because the younger progressives have become so anti-Israel, so anti-Semitic, based on critical theory, they're starting to eat themselves here. This is the logical fallout of anti-Semitism in this country, tied to critical theory in this country, and this is why it's not sustainable. Now, the question is whether or not the United States itself can survive until it all burns out. But it very clearly is at play at this point, and we're seeing this as well within the community of black business owners in this country, who we're told that they're the oppressed class, that the white people, the Republicans, are oppressing them, and a lot of them are realizing, wait a second, these people are coming after me.
That's all the way down
now,
to
I have to pause for a second because something happened about 2 minutes ago. I am hearing a radio station in my ear, and it's my radio station in Atlanta, and someone has clearly pushed a button somewhere, and suddenly now I am listening to WSB radio in Atlanta in my ear. Now, I had to say that so Jim would know, because I've been talking the whole time that this has been going on. Someone clearly is pushing a button somewhere. It's happened twice today. It is I have no idea why people keep pushing buttons to suddenly send programming into my ear, but they do. I'm sorry. The only way for me to do anything about it was to talk down the line so Jim could hear that someone had yet again pushed that button. Now, to get back to my point, I was fine. Honestly, I was fine until I heard a commercial and it was my voice. Y'all, I can't listen to myself on the radio. Just going off on a wild tangent here. The point is gone now. I'll focus on this. I cannot stand to listen to myself, and apparently it's very common. You yourself don't like to listen to you on a recording. You realize, is this really the way I sound? And apparently it's not actually the way you sound. You hear yourself differently from the way other people do, or so I've been told. But my goodness gracious, the deal breaker for me is the moment I hear my voice, it's game over. I cannot listen to myself. I don't like to watch myself on TV. I don't like to hear myself, and this is very common. Rush Limbaugh one time told me he had never listened to a single one of his shows because he didn't like to hear his own voice, which was fascinating to me. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. Glad to be with you. The phone number, if you want to be a part of this program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Interesting. I'm just seeing this Associated Press alert. Sasha Johnson, an activist who's played a leading role in anti-racism demonstrations in Britain, has been shot in the head. I don't know anything about it other than that, but goodness, that's a heck of a thing to push out this morning. Listen, y'all, this is, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit flustered if you're just tuning in the very last segment of the last hour. Something happened somewhere in my building and they routed suddenly radio programming into my ear, and I was in the middle of a good point, and then suddenly it fell apart as I was listening to my own voice from an advertisement. But so let me make this point and move on. Although at the bottom of this hour, my friend Victoria Coates is going to join me. She, in the Trump administration, was on the National Security Council, and then in the Energy Department, it was highly instrumental in helping block the Iran deal, get rid of the Iran deal, and also helping Jared Kushner with the Abraham Accords, among other things. She's going to join me to talk about the Israel-Palestinian situation. But there's clearly a level of trying to be even-handed in the way the left is covering this. There's a clear talking point in the American media that both sides are doing it. There is anti-Semitism right now, and there's Islamophobia right now. It's both sides, but I want to read you this from Axios. The New York Police Department's Hate Crime Task Force launched an investigation into a pair of anti-Semitic incidents in Brooklyn on Saturday night, days after the New York Police Department said it would increase patrols in Jewish neighborhoods amid a rise in hate crimes. The New York Police Department says 195 hate crimes were reported in New York City between January 1st and May 16th, an increase of 71% over the last year. 3 suspects are wanted for harassing a group of Orthodox Jews outside a synagogue in Borough Park and allegedly yelling, "Free Palestine, kill all the Jews," according to Assemblyman Simcha Eichenstein. The same group is suspected of having assaulted and yelled anti-Semitic language at 2 Jewish teenagers 45 minutes later. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio met on Sunday with the police and Jewish community leaders in Borough Park, a neighborhood with a large Orthodox Jewish community. Vandalism and harassment fueled by anti-Semitism and Islamophobia have been reported to law enforcement and shared across social media platforms throughout the U.S. and Europe, following 3 weeks of bombardments between the Israeli government and Hamas. 4 people were arrested in the UK for driving a convoy through an area of London with a large Jewish population and yelling violent anti-Semitic language. A 23-year-old man was arrested and charged with hate crimes for using a crutch to attack a Jewish man. In Los Angeles, people in a convoy of cars flying Palestinian flags harassed and assaulted patrons outside restaurants, chanting "Death to the Jews" and "Free Palestine." In Chicago, the window at the Persian Hebrew congregation, the window at the Persian Hebrew congregation was shattered, and surveillance caught 2 people on camera, one carrying a "Freedom for Palestine" sign. Now, follow along with me here. Let's follow the rabbit trail. Vandalism and harassment fueled by anti-Semitism and Islamophobia has been reported to law enforcement and shared across social media platforms across the U.S. and Europe. And then they list 4 examples, and all of them are attacks on Jews. None of them are Islamophobia. None of them are Islamophobia. I'm going to put this on Twitter so you can see it. Can anyone spot the Islamophobic crimes? Seriously here. You've got Axios, which supposedly just plays it straight. And they say there's Islamophobia and there's anti-Semitism. Here's a list of examples. Every single one of them is an example of anti-Semitism. Every single one of them is attacks on Jews or synagogues. Every single one of them, and yet somehow, where's the Islamophobia, folks? The even-handedness when you don't have to have it is striking. Now, this relates to something else. You know about all the anti-Asian hate in the United States, right? There's been a rise of anti-Asian hate. This is fascinating. So, Virulent Hate Project studies anti-Asian racism and Asian American activism during the COVID pandemic. It finds that where info about the race of a perpetrator is reported, 89.6% of anti-Asian bias incidents were actually committed by white assailants and speakers. Now, that's curious, isn't it? Curious. What do they mean, speakers? Let me read you this. When we combined these two types of incidents, harassment and stigmatization, we had information about the race and or ethnicity of offenders in a total of 184 anti-Asian incidents, 57 incidents of anti-Asian harassment, and 127 incidents of stigmatizing statements and actions. In the 184 incidents in which the race of the source was identified, the perpetrators were predominantly white. White individuals were reported as offenders in 165 of 184 anti-Asian incidents. In contrast, black individuals were identified as offenders in 10 of the 184 anti-Asian incidents. Now, follow along with me here. The left has become fixated on the rise of anti-Asian hate in this country, particularly in light of the spa shootings in Atlanta and elsewhere. And overwhelmingly, with the exception of the spa shooter in Atlanta, and that had more to do with sex addiction than anti-Asian hate. He was actually going to those people for sexual gratification. Almost all of the incidents are young black men. Almost all of them. In fact, the FBI has documented in instances of actual hate crimes, the majority, and I shouldn't say the majority, the plurality of them have been black Americans against Asian Americans, not white people. And so here comes a study supposedly of anti-Asian bias, and suddenly it's a massive amount of white people. It's white people. In 184 instances of anti-Asian hate, they've overwhelmingly from white people. You want to know what they are? This is fascinating. 55 of the 184 instances are from Donald Trump, President of the United States, a white man. His speeches, they considered it speeches. Tom Cotton, the United States Senate from Arkansas, 8. Peter Navarro, White House Trade Advisor. Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State. Ted Cruz, U.S. Senator. Jim Banks, U.S. Representative. Kellyanne Conway, former advisor to the president. Lindsey Graham, U.S. Senator from South Carolina. Michael Caputo, Health and Human Services spokesman under Donald Trump administration. Daniel Castelline, Augustine Police Department official. Michael McCall, congressman from Texas. Andrew Gasser, Algonquin Township Highway Commissioner. Kayleigh McEnany, White House Press Secretary. Tate Reeves, Mississippi Governor. That's right, friends. According to a group that chronicles anti-Asian hate, the reason they're saying that white people are the ones committing all the anti-Asian hate in this country is because they took speeches deemed critical of the Asian American community. You can't make this up. 184 instances in which the source of the race of the source was identified. The perpetrators were predominantly white. That's how they've decided to make it a white people thing. White people are the engaged in anti-Asian hate predominantly. Never mind the FBI statistics that show predominantly it's black people committed it. No. We're going to consider speeches that we find derogatory towards Asians. That's how we're going to rig this. This is rigging the system. That's exactly what it is. Rigging the system. So the FBI stats show that it's not true. So they've come out with this. Donald Trump, is responsible for 55 instances of anti-Asian hate in this country. What did he do? He opened his mouth. That's what he did. He spoke, and they didn't like it. How can you take any of these things seriously when that's the way they're going to exist? Of course, you can't. You can't take it seriously. But they're hoping the media doesn't actually report that. And in fact, the national press, when they ran with this, did not actually report that it was Republicans speaking. And you know what they were speaking about? That's right, the Wuhan virus. That's why there were so many. The media can't be honest with this stuff, because if they were honest with it, you would realize it's not the problem they want you to believe it is.